Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2022 One Sustainability Conference, our annual global sustainability event. We now have the pleasure to welcome Steve Sanders, and he will be telling us more about purpose and principles for differentiation and impact, the key to success in the age of stakeholder capitalism. Steve, I'm very happy to hand over to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your introduction, and I'm gonna move straight ahead into some slides. So this is me. You've already seen me on the screen. My name's Steve Sanders. I live in London, and I was born in Liverpool. But my accent could remind you of South African or a combination of all of those. I've lived and worked there for a lot of my career, and I've worked in and lived in over 20 countries during my life, including California. As a strategist and professional nonconformist, I've been paid to design and evangelize new ways of doing business for over 25 years. And along that path, I've led small, medium, large, and colossal businesses to billions in gains. You could argue gains or recovery of lost gains, depending on the situation. Today, I've spotted a very new challenge, and people I know are badly equipped for it. So I decided I'd have a crack at joining the dots and simplifying this global challenge for as many people as possible in business. And we'll get to that on the next slide. But in general, my business and that of my colleagues is to improve the valuation of companies. Now, sometimes the focus is breakthrough wins or changing the way businesses productize, sell, deliver. It all boils down to reverse engineering the best attributes of the highest value companies into clients' businesses, and then setting them up systematically for scale success. Now, I've had the privilege of working on quite a few groundbreaking business turnarounds and accelerated growth initiatives. I'm now an entrepreneur. I'm a fellow of the Institute of Directors, an ambassador of Warwick Business School, where I also guest lecture on their MBA Strategy course. And I'm also on the advisory board of a couple of companies and charities. As for today, I'd love to do this interactively, but in this case, flying solo online with so many people, it's going to be difficult. So let's capture some questions, and we'll see if we can get back to those. I definitely look forward to answering your queries in due course. But I'm here because of shared principles and purpose that's shared with the One Business World team and with you attending this conference. You see, like many of you, I know that I'm good at what I do. But you see, there are a lot of clever people out there, and me claiming I'm really, really very good at what I do, well, that's not enough anymore. But because of my purpose and principles, I stand here. And I'd like you to think about that after you've looked at the slides today and heard me speak, so that at the end you can consider the importance of being purpose-led, both in your strategy and in the strategy of your clients. In the middle of 2021, I started writing a book. And doing this, I actually started just by thinking about the people that I work with and care about, and that they wrestle with similar challenges. You know, they need to grow the value of their companies, but they also want to make a difference in the world. In other words, I'm good at what I do, but I need to differentiate. Otherwise, I can't grow the company and I can't increase its value to investors. And I also want to make a positive impact, but I can't convince shareholders that it's urgent. And so stakeholders will always come in a very distant second place compared to profit. And when I started looking at this, I realized that all competitors seem obsessed with the same things, trying to beat each other on feature-based advantages. And smart ones talk about customers creating value or impact. Very few seem to have joined the dots, that it's inevitable we're at a moment when positive impact or absence of negative impact will become a necessity for business survival and fundamental for increasing market share profitably. The bottom line is to build company level value, designing valuation growth into the very fabric of companies, and that's where our business is. So now you've realized that this is absolutely only made possible by the second imperative. And that is to align everything we consume or produce with the things that people care about most deeply at a human level. So these two imperatives will be kept in sharp focus throughout this presentation. And we need to activate personal accountability with business activism so that we can solve a full spread of issues that we face globally. And governments alone won't solve the problems, not without the public and businesses leading the solution. You see, there's just no hope of a great genius and leadership from governments to solve all of these things, not while big business taxes and political donations dictate their moral compasses. The public wants to buy from and work for businesses that do better, and that's more than 75% of the public. It's easy to ignore this shift, but when ethical alternatives arise, then buying and employment choices will flood towards companies of principles, purpose, and with evidence of doing more good. Now, this will be a determining factor in the age of stakeholder capitalism, far more than was the case in profit first and profit last shareholder primacy. But business, with the exception of ethically advanced outliers, is and will always remain profit focused, and that's absolutely essential. So the Five Horizons book and the audio book launching this month helps willing people to articulate that there is a great shift happening, and it's reaching a tipping point beyond which there will be a business disruption of global proportions, effectively killing off those that don't keep up. There is a positive that for those who spot it, there is a means to become fit for their future competitive world and not for the competition of the past. Then to prove that will result in increasing profits and higher valuations. So this guides people to use strategic planning in a simple and straightforward way, answering the same questions as before. But it helps this new source of competitive differentiation hit the ground at the right, carefully chosen moments, and with the right level of curation in your value chains to make sure that companies do everything they can and should do to justify and dominate in their chosen ethical differentiator. So the bottom line is that 200 million businesses can do something small, and that will change everything. And if they understand the competitive brick wall they're racing towards, I believe then we will see creativity and investment. To me, Five Horizons is all about getting timing right for the coincidental shift of buying criteria and new sources of ethical competitive differentiation that will add fuel to the fire of market-wide transformation. So the rest of this presentation is to help you understand and articulate what this could mean for you. You can get started by learning to have empathy with the needs, principles, and values of all your stakeholder groups, and how customers might value your qualities or punish your weaknesses in terms of commitment to factors such as environment, sustainability, governance, diversity and inclusion, or any number of factors that your target market could hold close to their hearts. And that provides an opportunity for you to choose. So that choice is to do more good or else not to bother. The greater the empathy you show to stakeholders and the better the impact you can achieve, or the more negative impact you can prevent, then the greater the loyalty you will gain. And that is among customers, employees, suppliers, and all related stakeholders. There is nothing more strategic than this. Recent research from Warwick Business School actually gave a precise figure to this. One of the professors there is quite well known for a similar study in recent years, but the one that is now coming to light is that the properly chosen investments in ethical and sustainability themes that are truly valued by stakeholders can add up to 5% to your company valuation. Poorly chosen investment in ethical and sustainability issues, poorly chosen, in other words, not well aligned with stakeholders' interests and priorities, can reduce the value of a company by up to 2%. So we come from an age of obsession with product excellence and shareholder profits. So coming from that starting point, you may lack some of the skills and perspective that you will need to make this transition. I just aim to help you succeed better. Some questions that need to be answered are, how do you affect stakeholders throughout your value chain and into the value chains of suppliers and of customers? Can you create new positive impacts? Or can you be the first to erase a negative impact? Is there a principle that's really important to you, your staff, and customers? And where in your business ecosystem will you find a source of maximum gravity that will pull you to mainstream success? Is that an opportunity to reinvent your company to become more systematically ready for scale growth? And is this an opportunity to attach your brand to a principle that will influence up to 75% of the buying public? How far into the future should you look? And how far across interconnected value chains should you study? Then lastly, who can you invite into that thought process to help you unlock potential? Who could become an evangelist for you? Pleading ignorance might allow you to survive, but only for a short while. I think it's time to change for good, or else. So let's talk about future mindset. I want you to win. I know you want your business customers to win, but that will be in the competitive mindset of the future, not the past. So what is this future mindset? Let's rewind and go back a little to the idea of a limited company, which has only been around for about 200 years. It started in the USA and then in the 1850s in the UK, so that it could protect entrepreneurs from losing everything personally if their venture failed. And as a result, it stimulated free enterprise and innovation, and that's a good thing. But human nature got in the way. Businesses grew so large that people became overly focused on profit outcome, and they lost sight of the effects of their businesses on suppliers, communities, the environment. It was also distant and impersonal. Now we're entering a phase where businesses must deal with this better. Let me explain why. You see, it has a lot to do with human values. Human values now matter more than ever. Our global human organism is at a precipice of unparalleled existential threat, and the aging demographic is intensely motivated by this. Have you heard of the phrase eco-anxiety? It pervades quite widely, and I can relate to it myself, in fact. The injustices that are put at the doorstep of business is under scrutiny. In a few years, millennials and Gen Z, for our American listeners, will be aged between 20 to 50. And these people suffer eco-anxiety. That's not new, but these days it's become pervasive. Think about it. The most valuable employees and customers, their decisions, who they work for, who they buy from, that will entirely or almost entirely be driven by which companies they think deserve it. This approach recommends maximum involvement in a study of the interconnected value chains of your business, answering these humanity-level questions. In there lies the answers that are critical to your future. So, onto the idea of the great shift. Beware the great shift. It is already happening. You see, markets move like the flow of a tide. To the idle observer, it looks like things will stay moving in the same direction forever until it changes direction. And by then, it's too late to get out of its path. Shifting attitudes of whole generations might appear to be unimportant in your business. One day soon, it will become critical. In this case, the changes will be more immediate across all sectors than even the internet was. But like the internet, it will take shape differently in every market. So this helps to avoid being surprised by a competitor that moves and captures the mood before you can. The intention is that you achieve that first mover advantage. So you'll wonder at some point why this isn't visible yet. I've been challenged by people suggesting humans are not likely to turn this into action. We collectively are too selfish. That is a human tendency. It seems natural to ignore all outlier opinions, even to label them as irrational, until one day that outlier trend becomes the majority. The issue is that urgency only increases when the pain potential reaches one's closest community, and the fear of it is greater than the fear of change. This illustrates how humans perceive how they relate to others. This graphic image of Dunbar's. 5 are your closest few or immediate family. 15 you might confide in. 35 close friends. 150 you might invite to a gathering. And 500 you recall who you met. 1,500 you may or may not recognize on the street. At the existential precipice, its proximity to everyone will make this urgent and important to everyone. So having explained this idea of the great shift and the tipping point we're reaching, there is a virtuous triangle of 3 actors: businesses, customers and markets, and governments and regulators. You see, not only is the great shift happening in the minds of consumers and businesses, it is also being acted upon by regulators. So these 3 actors move together to accelerate any such shifting norms in the world. So you'll be able to deep dive the principles of this and identify exactly how this may affect your market and when. The key point is that peaks of company failure don't happen because of times of recession. In the history of business, it proves that it's more aligned with our failure to look ahead, our inability to see the shifts approaching, or lack of will to act upon those market disruptions. If, as we suspect it will, the great shift results in a company mass extinction, it is worth acting now to influence which companies survive or die. Being purpose-led, and purpose-led differentiation will be the most impactful. The very nature of the purpose of companies is changing. Profit first and last, or shareholder primacy, as it was called, is yielding to companies that build resilience and sustainability into every possible aspect of their value chains. We will see this affecting company laws and the liability of shareholders and directors. And we need to work together to predict ways in which companies will need to morph their models and practices to become vehicles fit for the future state of what will be considered a viable norm in the future. There is much evidence from research that tells us that this is not a matter of if, but rather when the markets will shift. The risks are huge. Companies are paying lip service and relying on consumer ignorance persisting. But just like the 1990s emergence of the internet, many people brush this aside as a fad or as something in the wait and see basket. As a strategic imperative, this is right up there with the biggest. I can remember boardrooms in 1995 debating, is the internet going to matter in our business? I cannot imagine in 2005 any director keeping their job with that view. That's just 10 years. Those who planned in 1995 won the market. This picture is not just about sustainability strategy. This is about all new ideas. Get used to it. In this case, the shift is happening now. And yes, this is just another strategic analysis factor, yet it's one that needs a lot of creativity and vision. Shareholders will need to be sold on the idea that investing in doing the right thing will lead to more profits down the line. In reality, it's a requirement to ensure survival, not just increased profits. So company valuation, making your company more attractive for investors or acquirers. Why is one company more valuable than another? Do you know why? Because most people don't know. If your vision is to spend 5 years building a company, Or if you work for someone and ask them to spend money on your idea, it makes sense to maximize the company's intrinsic value, either to sell it for greater multiple or to get investment and give away less of your shares. Our model reverse engineers the qualities of the most valuable companies into your company, its culture, process, structure, technology, and all aspects that can potentially double or even triple the owner's ROI. Company value is improved this way. The reality is your future competitiveness will be directly affected by how you deal with stakeholder interests. This affects securing and keeping the best employees, customers, and suppliers. It will help avoid regulatory penalties that will start flowing soon enough just to impose better corporate practices. Investors know this. That is why they are measuring investments based on environmental, social, and governance measures and long-term value impact of companies. We focus on overcoming the simple reality. Those with stated stakeholder-aware purpose will succeed better, and those devoid of purpose, other than profit, will succeed less. Another key to company-level valuation is to be set up systematically for success, to be scalable without key personas being there in your unknown future of scaling. And whatever you do, if you want to be scalable by design, you can't remain dependent on just a few top people. Whatever they do, it needs to be codified in a way that is capable of scaling hands-off. Otherwise, you'll always be limited by design. And you'll find there are just a few use cases of processes, people, and technology that underpin your success. And these may be among the 5 or so bold steps to move your strategy forward. Maybe digitizing key parts of the company. Somehow the ideal ways of working need to be codified and put into the fabric of everything everyone does. Our approach keeps the spending down, complements what's already there, and focuses on making impact. And that's by adapting, automating, and maximizing compliance with the best ways of working. We can talk about examples, but I think what's really important here is that when you zero in on your sustainability aspirations and your ethical aspirations throughout value chains that are connected to yours, the overhead of governing compliance throughout those aspects of your value chain, multiple tiers away from your own organization, and even governing compliance within your own teams becomes sometimes an insurmountable challenge. So that is a function of this systematizing for success. So beyond your current horizons, to succeed, you need to look way past your current time horizon, the thinking on the next year to 2 years, and also beyond your own value chain. The impact your company makes and the impact of your competitors, that is happening now, and it will be amplified in the future. Imagine how closely your shareholders currently examine profits and predictors of profits. Then imagine a future where your impact is being scrutinized even closer, the good and the bad too. This can get complicated, or you can make it terribly simple. Your activities affect your own value chain and the value chains of suppliers and customers too. All of that is an opportunity to differentiate competitively. It's also a huge threat of someone else doing the same before you do. With the 5 Horizons model, we find the potential for positive impact or places to avoid negative impact across at least 5 interconnected value chain horizons and across 5 time horizons into the future. And this way you get to decide how to act upon that and when. The journey will result in creating ideas for what purpose really resonates with your people and your value chain, and precisely what you will legitimately be able to lay claim to as part of your identity, your value proposition, and purpose-led strategy. This needs to be treated like the development of any other strategic differentiation, respecting the proper strategic analysis criterion. You will receive the help needed to make the right choices that will maximize impact of purpose-led strategy in your business. finding a source of gravity that can pull you towards mainstream success. In my early career, I learned that no matter how good a product is, and no matter how good I am at selling it, that does not determine my success. I'm talking about mainstreaming and maximizing scale. And that won't come just from hiring more salespeople and pushing harder. The secret is different for all businesses. The approach is to scan any ecosystem for the vulnerabilities or opportunities that exist there, to pinpoint where that point of gravitational pull exists that can drag any company to its maximum success. And remember, it's not about the value you enable, but looking beyond horizons, how you can be even more valuable in someone else's value chain, in a future time horizon. Let's say someone buys you, they're probably buying your revenue and customer list, and maybe the quality of product they imagine will add to their portfolio. Essentially, that means 2 + 2 = 4, and that's optimistic. Normally, 2 + 2 = 3 or even less, once all the shenanigans are finished. Our approach to technology and proposition development can create dynamic capabilities, and that can offer an acquirer a multiplier effect on their whole business. See, it's our position, your ethical differentiation can have a similar effect on brand value. So perhaps for them, 2 + 2 could equal 8. But the bottom line is, it's not the models that figure this out for you, but it will be from the many people around you. And you need to learn how to involve them better. The book encourages readers to self-reflect and learn to lead better. Think about nonconformists. Nonconformists and contrarians get a raw deal. That's always happened. But you need to be that person. The forces of denial will be against you. Resistance will be ferocious, precisely because the future state of the market is not visible to the majority of people. That will always be the case, but now the change, the transition to that future state is almost unimaginable to many people. You yourself could be guilty of this. And that's when you narrow down viewpoints to ideas that you think fit into the current comfort zones. In this endeavor, you need to find out things that are not presently being discussed. You will need to become the champion of change. You will need a crew of evangelists who create that vision with you and become part of implementing it. Our approach avoids suppressing that contrarianism and nonconformism. We encourage it. Therein lies the future. For you to succeed, you will need all these insights and more. Your people and the people of your suppliers and customer market are the primary instrument you have available to succeed in this. It makes sense to become more inclusive and to tap into the unforeseeable insights and capabilities that you might uncover there, to create a perpetual strategy mobilizing asset among these people. So this research that you see here was to identify theory versus reality. The top 6 reflect where executives believe purpose equates to performance. The bottom 5 show that in reality, most companies are nowhere near ready. So the opportunity is clear. Purpose makes companies more attractive and therefore more successful in new product concepts, internal transformations, employee satisfaction, and customer loyalty. Most executives admit that purpose is lacking. Strategy and organization is misaligned, and people and executives lack a shared vision of purpose. We are moving into a time where younger generations feel motivated and empowered, so their demand dictates supply. The tipping point is nearing when companies that fail to do good will fail to retain the best employees and the best customers, and ultimately might fail to survive. Ultimately, I believe this is a choice, to decide to do better or else not to. Whether you see this as a threat or an opportunity, or just a figment of Steve's imagination, and by the way, there's many others with a similar figment of the imagination at the moment, well, that boils down to how you react. You can choose to act now, or you can wait and see. In my experience, being indecisive doesn't often turn out well. I sincerely hope that you make the right choices. The Five Horizons book and the new audio book are there to get you informed and open an opportunity to thrive through this disruption and market shift, for you to decide if action is for you. On the book website, you can register for future assets and tools. Soon, an online evaluation questionnaire will help assess readiness, and you'll be given access to a market report with guidance. As a next step, you might want to get access to online resources and training videos to sharpen your ability to execute. And for the right companies, working with scenario services or joining a peer group mastermind network could be the answer you need to move on with this opportunity. The time could be right to improve and extend the business model, digitally if appropriate. Ultimately, to disrupt and reshape your competitive landscape, or to address the disruption that others are creating. That is the bottom line. So please do reach out to us if you'd like to discuss acting upon this. Thank you. Wow, there you are again. Thanks for joining.
Well, Steve, this is a most important presentation. It's such a key issue, and I'm very grateful for the way you presented it. I've seen in a number of cases with the pressure of boards that very often this does not go too far, because you start talking about stakeholder concerns and values and so on, and the reaction is, no, it's going to eat into our profits. It's going to prevent us from earning more, and they refuse to look into it. So one procedure that I found interesting is bringing together purpose and profit. Every company has its own form of making money, and because of the procedures and everything else, you have to look at all the implications for stakeholders, bringing together purpose and profit. But when you're dealing with a company that has strong board and shareholder resistance to so-called wasting money on these things, how do you respond?
I am quite philosophical about it. I think that there are many organizations that join all strategic transitions at different points in the adoption curve. Some of them are early adopters, or some of them gamble and really take some high risks. Others wait until the point where they're being told or it's being imposed upon them as a matter of regulatory. Some of them are trying to keep up with others when they wait to see if somebody else does it. And yet again, some organizations see the competitive angle and they see there's an opportunity to be gained. And very few spot that they can maybe reshape the market dynamics and the landscape and change how companies are competing for business and how buyers are deciding on things. And that's been the same with a lot of disruptive, strategic transitions. It's in fact that what I just gave you was nothing to do with sustainability. That's just the way people talk about these things and the way boards react. So it helps to be conscious of what kind of mindset is present in the people that are around the table. And this is what the maturity model and the questionnaire is aiming at, is allowing people to look at some pretty obvious questions about various things, only a few of them about sustainability, the various things about how do you act upon these things, how do you work together as a distributed organization, how do you function more dynamically or less dynamically in a strategic adoption process, and that helps people to say, well, actually, we're not quite at level 2 yet. We're even maybe only at level 1. And if that's where you are, then that's okay. Let's respect that and let's open up new insights to those people, and help them to understand what's really going on in the world around them. And as I think I mentioned, this is a particularly tricky one because, I mean, if you think about what's been said since the 1970s, a friend of mine, Professor Ed Freeman, who's a great supporter of the book, and I think anybody who's studied this subject at university probably read one of his books. I was on a podcast interview with Ed, and And he's been banging this drum since the 1970s, right? So if you talk about the fatigue that can come into people's minds when they perceive it as something that's been discussed for so long, how can this possibly become what I call an existential threat for the business? But the reality is, as it becomes an existential threat for our customers and employees, it pretty quickly thereafter becomes an existential threat for the business. Yeah.
Okay, I would much like to continue this conversation. I have other questions, but we are running over time a little bit. I'm afraid we're going to have to stop now, but I want to thank you very much for this presentation. It touches on such essential subjects, and I wish you much success in moving ahead with this and getting more companies on board.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
All
hosting
right.
me.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.